Welcome back to another week of Instigating with Clarkie and Drury, brought to you by our friends at Larry Hudson Chevrolet Buick GMC here in beautiful Listowel, Ontario, and of course our friends at the Listowel Squash Courts. And speaking of, we've got one of our great friends and great supporters of this show, our buddy Alan McArthur from the aforementioned Listowel Squash Courts. Mac, how are you? How are things going?
Good. That was best introduction I've ever had. That was awesome. And there's 50%, like the best 50% of Instigating is here tonight, right? So like we have Brian, that's all we really need. Right. And what's Chris doing? Like he's got nothing going on. But
I don't know what Chris is doing. No one ever really know. Clarkie Lee, I swear he has like a secret double life as a semi-pro golfer. If you watched last week's episode, you'll know that he poses as a golfer from the 1960s from Norway, and so that's what he's doing. Probably he's on a golf course somewhere.
Yeah, just taking $100 bills from old boys, right? Like just raking it in.
Based on the attire he had on last weekend, I feel like he's the one giving out the $100 bills, he's like lost a bet or something with somebody. Now I know that Clarkie is a big participant over there, particularly in we used to refer to it as Jacob's Ladder. I don't know if it still is Jacob's Ladder or not, but the playoff format in the men's league over there at the Listowel Squash Courts. I know there's a summer league that goes on. Tell us a little bit about how that's been going, Alan.
Yeah, well, first of all, Chris is a very active member, and he's active in many ways for the club. He's actually a huge support to me. Somebody once told me that you can't expect your best friends to be your best customers, but open a business and your best customers will become your best friends. And it's really I've got a bond with a lot of these guys. Gotten close with them. They've helped me out. Chris stopped by for his fob the other morning, and he started helping me with glass and moving things around. Can barely walk, right? But that's the kind of guy he is. He's awesome. So just a shout out to him that he is a really genuine guy. We love him at LSE. But yeah, the Summer Squash League is going on. It's co-ed, and it's a box style. So we switched it a little from the ladder style, and you have separate boxes with 5 or 6 people in each box. You play for a month at a time rather than a Sunday to Sunday loop. So it's even more convenient for the consumer. If you go away for 2 weeks, you still have 2 weeks to play your matches. And then it's a point system. So whoever wins, however many points they win by or whatever, 2 people move up the next box for the next month, and 2 people move down the next month in the next box. So you're always playing fresh people and new people. It's kind of a cool way. We want to try it out, see how it would work with us, and it works so well that we're going to carry it on to finish up in September 15th. And then October 1st, we're going to start up our big box league. It's the big one. It goes from October to the end of April. And that's where we see a lot of people come off the golf course and into the courts because of the weather changing and fall's starting to hit. Kids are getting in school too, so it's a good time to kind of change up everybody's daily schedule. A lot of things happening. We keep it 24/7 for members, online booking. We're actually going through a bit of a software change where it's going to be, and this is insane, even more convenient again, but there'll be an app along with it. You can book online. You'll be able to register for some clinics and pay for them through your account on Easy Facility and through the Squash Courts. It's going to be a big change for us in the back end and just add more convenience for the consumer, for the members. Yeah.
Well, I know that that's, part of your mantra over there, and it is super easy to use the facility, get signed up. And like Alan just mentioned, it is a 24/7 facility. If you want to go in on a Sunday night at 3 a.m. and play squash with somebody, if you're a member over there, you can do that. It's pretty fantastic. I know I've done it before. It's a lot of fun over there, man. It's a great facility. And obviously, you mentioned that in the fall and winter months, your regular league's going to start up again. This box league formation that you're doing now, you're going to carry that forward. But you also mentioned different clinics and stuff. And I know you've had some pro players come through and been involved with different clubs that have come through and held events there. What sort of things are you talking about when you say special clinics for members? What are you talking about?
So we're going to have a bi-weekly. It changed from Jacob's Ladder to Josh's. So Josh Claxton came in, and he came from Waterloo, a fairly reputable club, and he's cleaning house. Like, he's good. Tough guy to get some points on. So I approached him and I said, listen, can you start doing clinics for us guys that are in the mid range and just want to increase some of our different aspects of our game, or even knowledge of the game? So he's going to do bi-weekly clinics every other week. He's going to set it up and do some youth for an hour, and then do some adults for an hour and a half. It's going to be somewhat drop in, so you'll sign up, and there'll be a little bit of a fee for that, but we keep it as cheap as we can, for sure. And it's gonna really help everybody's game in the club. We're also looking at monthly social events for members. I was talking to Clarky the other night. He's going to bring his projector in for Super Bowl, and we're going to do a chili cook-off for members, and just see who can make the best chili in Listowel, right? Because if you don't compete, you don't know. So we'll hopefully get some people signing up. We're going to do a Halloween dress-up tournament in October. Kind of keep things themed to months. Do some different things. Cookie exchange in December. Keep it fun. Keep it social. We're a bit of a community too. We've really created bonds between people that would have never crossed paths otherwise. So it's neat to see. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the great part about a facility like that. And I know, we've been there a couple times, done some shows there. We have to do a Super Bowl show there. If Clarky is bringing a projector, I'm a big football nut, fantasy football guy. I think that there's another show at Listowel Squash Courts in the making. If there's going to be a Super Bowl party, I'm going to need to be involved, Alan.
No, that's great. That's awesome. Yeah, well, for sure. Actually, on the 25th of August, we're going to do a huge event too. Kind of a member appreciation and open house for the public. So we're gonna have members playing. We're gonna do hot dogs, give away some hot dogs. If you want a hot dog, come down. Clarky is actually talking about maybe seeing about you guys coming and doing a live show then, showing a bit of the squash members and some of that. So we'll try and get that lined up. But yeah, there's definitely Super Bowl. You're on for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll have to lay some bets down. I've been known to throw some extra coins I find in the couch at some sports bets. So we'll come up with something special for the members where we all get involved in some sort of betting wager on the big game. But yes, August 25th. I'm glad you mentioned that, because Clarky had mentioned it to me. We'll definitely try and come out. We'll be there, and we'll make sure that everybody hears about it. And, for people who are watching the show that still maybe aren't familiar with the facility, how can they get signed up, Alan? Because it really is a super simple process.
It is, and it's only going to get easier with this new software that we're going to implement in the next few weeks. But just give me an email, Allen at listowelsquashcourts.ca. You can give the store a call, 418-444. 519-418-4444. Or stop by if you see my truck there. You can feel free to pop in and check it out. Super, super easy to sign up and become a member, and then it only gets easier after that.
Absolutely. There's a great website. There's a Facebook page as well. You guys are active on social media. It's not hard to find out more, and eventually go check out the facility and get hooked up with a membership. It's an extremely fun game to play. And Alan, anything else that you've got in the cooker at the facility? I mean, you've run down a bunch of events for us. Anything else big in the works? I know that you had some stuff worked out where you guys had some local hockey teams come out. I know the Mitchell Hawks were involved. Yeah. You can have events there as well at the facility too.
Great point. We just had our year end in April. I realized I need more room, so I did a bit of a reconstruction of the loft. So it's about 40% bigger now upstairs for viewing. You can completely see court one. I always have stuff going on. Just a point about the Super Bowl and the betting and stuff. Let's work it out that we try and raise some money for men's mental health. I've had some issues with close friends and family, so kind of taking that on as my charity role. So that goes awesome with the Super Bowl. So me and you got to get talking about doing something like that for sure.
100%. That's something that that I'm super passionate about as well. Men's mental health. That's a deal, my friend. We're gonna set something up. We'll get the details hashed out. Maybe we can get the viewers of the show involved. Get it out on social media. We'll try and do something where there's some form of Super Bowl betting, and we're gonna make sure that a bunch of proceeds go to men's mental health. I love the idea. I am on board.
Awesome.
Good stuff. Alan, I appreciate your time. You're a busy guy. You're doing this with me while you're out on the road at a lacrosse event. I know you're a busy dude, but hey, never too busy to help out new people and prospective new members who want to join up at Listowel Squash Courts. Please do so if you're thinking about doing it. Awesome facility, 24/7 access for members, and Alan is the guy to talk to get it done. Alan, thanks so much for doing this, brother.
Thanks for having me, Ryan, like always.
All right, we'll be right back with Steve Sabourin of CKNX Jr Hockey. We're going to talk a little bit about the Blue Jays first. Steve's a big baseball guy like myself. We'll talk about a somewhat disappointing trade deadline and the upcoming CKNX Jr Hockey season on AM 920 next, here on Instigating. Welcome back to Instigating with Clarkie and Drury. Ryan Drury back on here. Now, we said Clarkie wasn't on the show. Now, Clarkie's busy. He's on vacation. But even though he's on vacation, he never stops working for the customer. And neither do our friends over at Larry Hudson Chevrolet Buick GMC. Clarkie, you're on the show. It's incredible. You're in the middle of nowhere. Where are you right now?
I don't know. I'm on highway. What highway are we on? 169. 169 in the Muskoka area, somewhere up here near Bala, I think. So we're just cruising. I'm relaxing because it's going to be a busy day Monday, the Civic holiday. We're breaking the news here, Ryan. We're doing a huge Civic Day sale at Larry Hudson. So come on in. We are offering $7,000 off demos. That's continuing as well. $7,000 off our 23 HD trucks. You get a $500 grocery gift card if you purchase. It will be a spectacular day, a busy day. So come on out early when the selection's good, because there's lots of selection. Last year, it wasn't that great, but this year we have lots of selection.
Lots going to be on the lot. Clarkie and our friends at Larry Hudson's will help you out. Huge. Hey, as a journalist, you know this, Clarkie. I love breaking news, and you're doing it from the road. You're doing it from the road, and there's everybody with you. Unbelievable. You're tearing down the highway, and you're tearing up great deals over there at Larry Hudson's. Go see them, 1000 Wallace Avenue in Listowel. Clarkie, thanks for checking in, brother.
All right, have fun with Sabby, and go Leafs go.
Absolutely. We'll be right back. Steve Sabourin of CKNX Jr Hockey coming up next. We're talking Jays. We're talking local hockey. It's around the corner. That's next on Instigating. Welcome back to Instigating with Clarkie and Drury. As mentioned, heading into our last break, we are joined by a very special guest, friend of the show. Steve Sabourin of CKNX Jr Hockey joins us. Sabby, it's great to have you on, man. How are you?
Well, you know what? It's amazing how fast a year goes by. Well, in this case, a few months since wrapping up our last junior hockey season, and we're getting set to go September the 15th as teams get back to work, as they say.
Yes, and people are probably wondering, what are we doing talking about hockey? It's August. It's the middle of the summer. We got a lot to break down because camps are going to get underway soon. There's a lot to touch on. Before we do that, we'll stick with something more summer themed to start. Let's talk about the Blue Jays. Post-deadline, we are recording this On Thursday, it is August 3rd as we speak. It's been a couple days since the expiration of the Major League Baseball trade deadline. And Sabby, like, there was some action around the league, but the Jays didn't really get involved in much of that. Obviously, prior to the deadline, they acquired Genesis Cabrera, who has pitched really well for them so far in his brief appearances. The big move is Jordan Hicks getting a 104-mile-an-hour flamethrower, also coming over from the Cardinals, and they really tapped into St. Louis. They also bring over shortstop Paul DeJong, who is obviously going to be filling in the interim as Bo Bichette sits on the 10-day IL. But overall, Sabby, I'm feeling pretty underwhelmed yet again with Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro's work at the deadline here. What are you feeling about what they did or maybe did not do?
Well, you know what? It's interesting because when you look at the American League East teams, and even Brian Cashman for the Yankees coming under fire for not doing anything at the deadline, and basically saying this is our lineup, this is what we're going to roll with. For the Blue Jays, I mean, you have to think they're looking at the personnel they have and saying they're going to come together at the right time. Statistically, right now, that's tough to say because when you look at the offensive output, they're way behind pace compared to last year. Like Bo Bichette is leading the team, while him and Vlad are tied for home runs with 17 each. Vladdy has 66 RBI. But other guys, Matt Chapman is way behind his statistics from last year. Defensively, I think they're set. Pitching is pretty good. But the question is, why aren't they hitting? And I don't think they had enough room to bring in another guy as a hitter, so to speak, because they have a lot of faith in who they have. But they have to perform.
Yeah, and that's my issue here, Sabby, is that this, like, baseball is about as fickle a sport as any out there. The feel and the ability to hit comes and goes for certain guys. Now, this team, when we look at it on paper and when we looked at it in March, everybody was going, wow, this is going to be one of the best lineups in terms of offense in the American League, let alone their own division. And they've added some defensive stoutness, bringing back guys like Whit Merrifield, who, in my opinion, is their MVP. Like, yes, Bo leads the league in hits and all, and he's been pretty good. But on both sides of the ball, like, Whit Merrifield has been an unbelievable find. He's playing some of the best baseball he's ever played at 34. Kiermaier comes in, obviously, and he's a plus defender. And they acquired DeJong, who's a plus defender too, and he's a better defender at short than Bo is, who, to his credit, has made some strides this year. But DeJong is a better defender. However, he's not a very good hitter. And when you look at what's happening this year and what's actually happening, not what we like on paper, not what we think is going to happen, what is happening is that the Blue Jays hit .238 with runners in scoring position, which is absolutely terrible. They strand runners left and right. They have we had Tom Volk on, who's longtime MLB pro scout and instructor, and he was frustrated with their approach or lack thereof at the plate. Guillermo Martinez is coming under a lot of fire, Sabby, for what he is or is not doing to correct what's happening with these hitters. What's your opinion on what you're seeing in terms of approach or lack thereof at the plate right now?
Well, you also have to look, when they made the improvements in the offseason to bring in your Kiermaier, your Varsho, part of the plan was to also improve their base running and their sense on the base. They're much more active on the base pass this season. They're more of a threat on the base pass. So to me, when they went out and made these changes, it was almost like they weren't worried about the hitting because, hey, we've hit for 2 to 3 seasons now. We don't have to worry about the hitting. They traded their third best hitter from last season in Teoscar Hernandez with 25 home runs and 77 ribbies and sent him to Seattle. They picked up a couple outfielders who aren't as strong as the plate by far, but better defense, better speed. Which to me looks like they said to themselves, hey, we've got Bull, we've got Vlad, we've got Chap, we've got Springer. We're okay at the plate. Danny Jansen and Alejandro Kirk had a phenomenal season last season. You know, even if they were 2/3 of what they were last year, it's great production. So just from how they moved things in the offseason into this year, it looks like they weren't even looking at hitting because they were comfortable with what they had. And now it's they haven't been able to adapt to anything. They're using the same strategy now as they did at the beginning of the season. We all know Bo Bichette's a very aggressive hitter, and I'd like to see his first pitch swing rate because he goes after a lot of first pitches. And it seems to have trickled down the order as well, being very aggressive at the plate. But Bo's a fantastic hitter, and there are a lot of guys that are swinging and missing very badly. And they are not being as selective as they could be, which then negates your base speed because you know the guy's either going to not get a hit or strike out based on the statistics, and you can keep them to better eye on the base runners.
It's almost baffling given that you mentioned it, Sabby. They hit for power so often over the last couple years. Vlad had a near MVP year, hit 48 bombs. The power has left him. It's still in there. It's just the approach doesn't allow him, and the guys around him, frankly, with how bad they're hitting or not hitting, don't allow him to get himself into positions with pitchers where they have to throw him some meatballs. Because if you pitch inside to Vladdy, he's shown it a little bit in a couple games after the All-Star break, obviously at the All-Star break, winning the home run derby. He showed if you get something in around his hands, he can still absolutely launch it. But why would pitchers throw anything dangerous toward this guy when there's no one on base half the time? And if someone is on base, they're on first. And the amount of times that Jay's hitters, Springer in particular, are topping the ball, they hit into more easy one bounce double plays on groundouts than I have maybe ever seen in a major league season, Steve.
Well, you know, you mentioned about the runners on base with Vladdy. It's not just who's hitting in front of them because you got to set the table to bring your RBI guy in to hit. It's also who's behind him. And Vladdy hasn't had a consistent threat in behind him throughout the season. He's had several hitters line up behind him through this year. And there hasn't been that consistent 1-2 punch in that 3-4 spot as it keeps getting juggled around. The other thing that I have noticed this season, I have seen a lot more batter versus pitcher matches, meaning lefties don't face left-handed batters don't face left-handed pitchers, or they try to substitute left-handed batters to face that righty. I've seen a lot more of that going on this year instead of just staying with your main guys day in and day out to pound at the ball. In fact, I was at the Jays game last Sunday against the Angels. The Angels had 8 left-handed batters in the lineup to face Chris Bassett. 8 lefties. And then as soon as Tim Meza came in, pinch hit. So you also have to wonder, too, is if guys have been able to get into a groove in the sense that, you know, you're juggling left and right, going in and out all the time. You know, one night you're batting first, the next night you're batting fifth. And I know you're pros, and I know you're supposed to step in and be the best when you get put into a position. But at the same time, sports always works on momentum. And if you get that little bit of doubt in your mind, how effective are you going to be as a collective if everybody starts kind of losing their way, so to speak?
It's interesting too. I mean, that you were at that Angels game, the only one of the series that they lost, because the Angels, for all their detractors in keeping Shohei, being aggressive, getting Giolito and all this, they're 5th in the AL in runs scored. Like, they score runs, even with Mike Trout not part of this lineup. Mickey Moniak, what a great story. A former first overall pick who could not figure it out in Philly, has revived his career out there with the tattoos and everything. It's awesome. I love that. The Jays don't right now have a lot of that depth throughout their lineup where they can get a Hunter Renfroe to step up and be a threat behind Ohtani. They can get Moniak to be a threat, and in the very least, if not hit for power, get on base. And I'm just so fed up with this front office. And I really do feel that as we record this, they're still holding on to the last wild card spot. This team is legitimately in danger of missing the playoffs with an expanded wild card spot, when we were told at the beginning of this year that this was supposed to be one of the most potent lineups in baseball that improved significantly defensively. They did that, but now they're not hitting. And my problem with Shapiro and Atkins is not reacting to what's needed now. Last year, they desperately needed a couple power arms. This Jordan Hicks move would have been welcomed with open arms last year. This would have been an amazing move, and it still is, because the guy's a flamethrower. He's scary with his control, but last year, imagine they made that move. This year, for a month now, all anyone has talked about is they better go get a bat, a right-hander preferably, with some power at the deadline, and they didn't do it. This front office walks all over its own toes all the time, Steve. They'll say, well, we don't want to trade a bunch of our top prospects, of which they have very little, and even less now. They kept Tiedemann, but Kloffenstein's gone. They traded a couple other young pieces. We don't want to trade a bunch of our prospects to load up because we want a sustained period of winning. Where is it? The Baltimore Orioles, Steve, a perennial 110, 115 game loser, are about to win the American League East Division title before this Jays team wins a playoff series. It is infuriating to me. And honestly, it should, especially if they end up missing the playoffs, which I hope doesn't happen, it should cost them their jobs. I'm tired of Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro and their political speak not going out and addressing what this team needs at the most critical time of year. Your thoughts?
Well, but again, it's a culmination of the seasons, what has been done in the past seasons. Like, who are you going to give up to get that hitter? You made your trades in the offseason to improve defensive speed and keeping those key players that were a big part of your offense the last two seasons. Who are you going to part ways with? There's nobody in that lineup that you're going to trade away to get another bat that may or may not help you. Are you going to get rid of Matt Chapman? You're not going to get rid of George Springer with the contract he has. You're not going to get rid of Chapman. He's the best third baseman defensively in the American League in my eyes. So I think over the years, and you mentioned last year's trades, everything that has been done in the past leading to this point has left them not many other options. They got what they could get, but there's no room to get another power hitter. Because as much as you could say this, we'll give you this player and this, the other team's looking the other way. So in my thought, unless you're ready to part with one of the big three or four, there really wasn't a lot of room to work with.
That's a great point as well, and is also part of my ire toward this front office. When they came over from Cleveland, Steve, you'll remember this, all the hoopla and talk was, wow, these two guys, particularly Shapiro, kept a Cleveland Guardians team, then they were still called the Indians, kept that team competitive and in the mix, albeit in a much weaker division, but still kept them in the mix all the time for playoff spots with an underwhelming budget, not Oakland A's level, but an underwhelming budget in Cleveland. They watched a lot of star players leave that team, but they drafted so well. They found great prospects. They found Jose Ramirez. They found Chevalier and all these guys, the Biebers, everybody. They found those guys and kept the pipeline moving. And now they have a bigger budget. You would assume a bigger scouting staff and bigger scouting budget and more money to spend on international imports. Where is the farm system? Because yes, we don't have a lot of guys to trade away. That's also on them. And I get that the baseball draft is the biggest crapshoot of all sports drafts. It really, really is. Look, we just talked about Mickey Moniak, a number 1 overall pick, hasn't caught on until now. It's 2023. However, that was supposed to be these guys' bread and butter. And now to sit here at a trade deadline where they could desperately have used a Tim Anderson or someone like that to inject into this lineup, to sit here and go, well, what are we going to give up? That's their fault too, Steve.
Well, and that's what I prefaced, is leading up to this point is a culmination of a few seasons. It's just not one season, because each year a little bit was nibbled away. Now, we also have to point out, too, the Toronto Blue Jays aren't the only team with the big payroll who are struggling.
You're right.
Like, I mean, you could take our discussion, you can move it to the Mets, you can move it to the Yankees.
Oh, God,
you can move
the
it,
Mets.
You can move it to the San Diego Padres.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, as much as we talk about the Toronto Blue Jays and their woes, they still have a better record than those 3 teams that I just mentioned. And they also have all-star rosters and fans scratching their heads. Well, not the Mets don't anymore. They traded everybody away. But I mean, that's the thing is the Jays are not uniquely a team in a situation that everybody's going, what's wrong? The other point is the American League East, and I will defend very, very much that it is the hardest division in baseball. Every team might be North American sports right now, Steve. How many times do you see a division year in, year out where 90%, if not all of them, have a winning record? Because they can beat the other divisions, but they chew on themselves. And for the longest time, of course, with the wild card situation, only one team makes it out of there. So anyways, it's very, very frustrating. But, in the end, they came up with a plan. They hung their hats on Vlad Guerrero and Bo Bichette, and that's what they're going to have to go with. They have a great pitching staff. They have great defense. And always the comments is good defense and great pitching wins you championships. It's just they got to hold on, find a way to manage some runs and get into the playoffs, and then let it go from there.
They basically, in my opinion, you're right. The pitching is great. It's literally elite. Their bullpen has been, since May, one of the best, if not statistically, if you look at things like FIP, fielding independent pitching, and just straight up ERA and ERA plus, this bullpen's literally been the best bullpen in the American League, you could argue, for long stretches, and then they get Hicks and Cabrera in there. They are, in my opinion, if I'm ownership, Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins have laid their sword down on praying that these hitters that we know can hit better than this will come alive when it's most important, because they have what they didn't last year, and that is the pitching and defensive acumen. They have that. I'd put their defense in the outfield and infield up against anybody in baseball. They are, if I'm the owners, laying their stake and the future of their positions with the Toronto Blue Jays on this lineup coming alive. Because if they go out in the wild card round again, or God forbid, miss the playoffs, we will look back on this Toronto Blue Jays lineup, Steve, in my opinion. And hey, quickly before we end this segment, you might actually have a bit more context to this than me. I was literally an infant when they won the back-to-back World Series. I think, in my opinion, if they miss the playoffs, Steve, we will look back on this Toronto Blue Jays team as the most disappointing Toronto Blue Jays team of all time. Your thoughts on that?
Wow, that's harsh.
It's harsh, but
you know what? You could look at the Toronto Blue Jays team that was ready to go on, and they fell apart near the end of the season and let Detroit catch them. And Detroit Tigers ended up winning the American League East. That was back in the George Bell, Jesse Barfield days. There was the 85 season,
yes,
which was supposed to be fantastic. And then, 89, you had 89, which was a great season, and they didn't get there. 91, they lost to the Twins. And
they made the playoffs, though.
They made the playoff. But, they made the playoffs. But
I'm just saying, if they miss the playoffs,
yeah,
they will be the most disappointing roster, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you know what? When you look at in the 92 and 93, when they won the World Series those years, in 92, they made a heck of a move at the deadline, and they picked up David Cone. Right?
Oh, God, what a move.
Right, but they also had guys like Jack Morris for the entire season. Jimmy Key stepped up in the playoffs in late season and had a phenomenal end to his career. Then in 93, they pick up a veteran in the name of Paul Molitor, and he spent the season with the Jays. And then they go out and they get Ricky Henderson at the trade deadline to bolster
Not
that
a bad
up.
Player. Not bad.
So when you look at who they traded for back in 92 and 93, those were two future Hall of Famers, not to mention some of the Hall of Famers they had on their rosters. So who's going to step up and be the Hall of Famer for the Toronto Blue Jays to get them to the playoffs and beyond this season?
It better be Vlad, and it better be George Springer. Those guys have got to start to bring it, man. I don't know. I'm nervous, but I still have that little flicker of hope that someone can get back to being the player that we knew they used to be just a short time ago at the plate. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, it's time to talk about local junior hockey. It's literally around the corner. Might not feel like it with the heat out there. Trust me, hockey is right around the corner, and CKNX Jr Hockey is very excited to be back to bring you all the action. We'll talk about that next here on Instigating. Welcome back. Wrapping things up this week on Instigating with Clarky and Drury. Ryan Drury back here with Steve Sabourin of CKNX Jr Hockey. And speaking of which, with no further ado, it's time to talk a little bit about hockey in the summer, Steve. We're heading into our 19th season broadcasting local junior hockey games in Listowel and across the PJHL Pollock division. And there are a lot of great storylines heading into this year, Sabby? I mean, we got some shakeups in front offices, obviously new players coming in, new teams joining the fold, and a trio of teams celebrating some significant milestones as well. It's going to be an incredible year.
Yeah, and you know what? 50 years to be part of a hockey team that represents your community and the best of is fantastic. And of course, we're talking about the Listowel Cyclones, the Winningham Ironmen, and the Walkerton Capitals, formerly Walkerton Hawks, formerly Walkerton Blackhawks. So it's going to be a fantastic season. Let's start off with the Listowel Cyclones. They have a great opening weekend. They'll be playing in Stratford on Friday the 15th of September. And then on home ice, Saturday, September the 16th for their home opener against the Stratford Warriors as well. And of course, Dave Williams, former Listowel Cyclones head coach that led the team to their first Terry Cup championship, and now he's the coach of Stratford. All the players that are coming back. So I've actually talked with the Listowel Cyclones. They're planning a whole alumni day on September the 16th. It includes some alumni games, memorabilia set up at the arena, some presentations and ceremonies, but they really want to make a big deal about this because, again, 50 years of junior hockey in Listowel is fantastic. We'll be broadcasting that game, by the way, and get ready, Ryan, because they want to hook us into their hockey TV. So if anybody's watching from home, they get to hear our wonderful voices as well. So it's, a great start there. And then, with the team itself coming in, very excited to see this team. They have some additions, and they are very skilled, very fast, and a lot of them have another year of junior hockey under their belt. So looking for this team to mature forward and improve upon what they did last year.
Yeah, coming off 2 straight seasons, obviously missing that COVID year, but 2 straight seasons of 6th place finishes, and they're not very satisfied with that. And I remember, last year during our PGHL playoff coverage, talking with Corey Dietz, who's of course involved in the front office and involved in player personnel decisions there. And he was saying to us just how badly they want to crawl back up the ladder, and they have designs on doing that this year. And how special would it be in their 50th year to see the Listowel Cyclones inch their way back up the standings and challenge some of the big heavy hitters that have been in control of this division and this conference, the Cambridges, the Stratfords, the Elmires of the world, Waterloo, of course, as well, Kitchener-Waterloo, over the last number of years. It would be a great story. I'm really excited to see what they do, what they bring in. Of course, speaking of alumni, Holden Lansink, arguably their greatest and most accomplished player, coming back to be a coach after spending the last couple seasons, very successful seasons, might I add, as an assistant with the Mitchell Hawks. He's coming back home. I see him around town quite often. So it's a great story as well to have a local kid coming back to not only have led the team to so much success on the ice, but now be involved on the bench. I think that when you look at a guy like Holden, and even, our good buddy, I talk to him often, Caleb Cameron, guys like that, the Nick Spallings of the world, when you bring up the Listowel Cyclones to them, even though they're not all coming back to coach like Holden is, nothing but positive things to say and positive experiences to share being a part of this club. And that's going to be something that's so special to celebrate 50 years of, right?
And I think one of the things when you look at coaching side as well is for the last few years, Jesse Cole has split time as head coach and general manager. While general manager now belongs to Trent McClement, Jesse Cole is strictly the head coach. And there's a focus there. Now there's a focus on 2 jobs from an individual each. So this will allow Trent to do what a GM needs to do and Jesse to do what a head coach needs to do. So I move, and it's going to give the game plan and the team a lot more focus as opposed to someone who's split in 2 different directions trying to serve 2 different masters.
Absolutely. And you can bet, as Steve mentioned, we will be there, the CKNX Jr Hockey crew, myself, Steve, and of course, Johnny K, John Colias will be there on Saturday, September 16th, Listowel Cyclones home opener. We will be there. We don't do a lot of Saturdays during the regular season, but it's a special one. We are going to be there. Preceding that, though, on Friday, the 15th, we will open our season on CKNX Jr Hockey with coverage of the PJHL. And like we mentioned off the top, 2 great franchises celebrating 50 years in that league as well, Steve.
Yeah, the William Ironman, of course, coming in after a fantastic season last year. Walkerton Capitals under new management last season. They brought in head coach Chad Haggett about midway through. He's back to start the season fresh. They are also celebrating 50 years. And I mean, these two teams have been, for their communities, but it's been a pleasure to work with them because we followed Walkerton through their championship years. We followed Wingham through their big days, and they have a lot to offer both sides. And I know Wingham has some big plans to bring some alumni back. Of course, they held a big golf tournament there earlier, late July, and they have some other big plans coming up. The Walkerton Capitals, through the hard work of their executive, have refurbished the Hawks dressing room. It's the oldest arena in our loop, and players walking into the dressing room are going to have a fresh new look. Saw some sneak peek pictures there. Talked with James Lang, of course, the president, and they've been hard at work there. So, I said to James, and I said, people may brush off a whole, wow, some new dressing room stuff. Oh, wow, what does that do? To me, it shows an investment. The executive is investing in the team to give players a great experience, because when you go play a game at home, play. You don't want to sit there and go, oh my gosh, we got to go there. No, they're ready to go. And from a hockey operations standpoint, Jordan Turcotte's been very, very busy picking up some players to fill out their roster. And you know what? It's going to be an exciting night on the Friday. Of course, you have to play a whole season and not just one weekend. And then the following week, actually, will be in Walkerton for their home opener against Mount Forest, as the defending champs Patriots open up the Walkerton Capitals home schedule.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. September 15th, 16th, we open our season. Following week, obviously, we'll continue and we'll be in Walkerton, opening things up in Wingham. It's going to be really fantastic. Like I mentioned off the top, there's not just news in terms of significant milestones and celebrations to be had. There's also a celebration and welcoming of a new franchise to the PJHL Pollock division. We're going to nicely round things out finally with 8 teams again. Everyone's going to have to play in the first round now, which will be a nice change, and I'm sure the players appreciate it too, as we welcome the Fergus Whalers organization into the fold. And funnily enough, a bit of a Cyclones connection there. Jason Byer, the father of Brock Byer, who was in net for the Cyclones when they won that 16-17 Cherry Cup title, is at the head of this new organization. And he's been involved with a number of organizations helping out in terms of goaltending coaching. I know that when the Mitchell Hawks won their first championship 2 years ago, he was a big part of that. And now he's getting involved in the front office of a brand new franchise. And we are going to be doing some broadcasting from beautiful Fergus, Ontario.
Well, you know what? Funny you mentioned that. Just got a note back from Jason Byer about the schedule, and we are definitely trying to fit in a Fergus home game. We got to tinker with the schedule a little bit, because it looks like Sundays will be their days to play hockey at home for the most part. November 17th, the Fergus Whalers are actually going to play in Arthur for a game against the Mitchell Hawks. And it's going to be actually a mental health fundraiser night between the Mitchell Hawks and the Fergus Whalers in Arthur. So that's actually the one game we're doing involved. So that will be a great night. And then we'll feature the Fergus Whalers on the road as well. So again, always excited to welcome a new team. And, when you look at Fergus, the history they've had with junior hockey, up to the point with the Devils, which actually played in what is now the Carruthers division with Alliston and Penetang and some of the other teams in that loop pre-COVID, and then folded up. It's a new direction for Fergus coming to the Pollock division. So excited to see how they will compete in this upcoming season.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. And I think, knowing Jason as we do, he's a pretty competitive guy. His kid was pretty competitive too. There's definitely, he has a very affable nature. He's a very easy guy to like, but you can definitely tell that there's a fire in there burning. And I think that they have their sights set on making a big statement here. I don't think that they have any plans on coming in and being, an Atlanta Thrashers-esque type of story. They have designs on being a Vegas Golden Knights or a Seattle Kraken type story. They definitely want to compete and be good right away, and I'm excited about that. And November 17th, obviously, I got to find a way to be there. Not only is Arthur my hometown, but if it's a mental health initiative, I got to be there too at what is one of the finer hockey rinks in the local loop. In my opinion, the ACC is legendary. The Arthur Community Center, some of the best ice in Southern Ontario for my money. I've played on it many times, and it's a lot of fun. I can't wait for that. That's going to be great. There's been a lot of shakeups now. We're going to dig in, as always. You're going to find them on our website. We're going to do a full deep dive into all the teams we cover, all now 9 teams, the Cyclones and the 8 PJHL Pollock Division teams. We're going to start pumping those out right before the season in mid-September. You'll be able to find those there, and we'll be talking with an executive from every team. But just briefly, without digging into too much player movement, Steve, because we'd be here all day, some interesting shakeups just in terms of some front office maneuvers. Let's start in Goderich, where Todd Norman, obviously also coming from that successful Listowel Cyclones franchise, is now taking up the reins in Goderich, and the Flyers are really making a statement that they want to start to climb the ranks as well here.
Yeah, Todd Norman is general manager and wasting no time in getting the team set. They've recruited some younger players. They are a young team. They were able to keep some core players as well. Names as when you look at who they have, Stutzman, one of their go-to guys last season, of course, in the mix again. The Flyers, though, have some work to do if they want to be competitive, but it takes time and it takes steps, and the players that they have recruited, some of the newer ones, Reed Williams, a Listowel native who was an AP with Kincardine last year, solid defenseman. It's not just their skill, but their mindset, focused on the game. They don't get distracted, which is what you need. You want players that are going to be able to take the information that's given to them by the coaching staff, apply it, and improve game by game. Owen Shore is another one they have back in the lineup. Tremendous athlete from the Ben Miller area, and looking forward to see them a couple times this year for sure. So the Flyers getting ready to go and can't be taken lightly by any stretch of the imagination.
And then obviously another big one here just to finish off, our buddy Josh Keel, who had a lot of success with the Mitchell Hawks, leaving his post as director of hockey operations. Of course, last year, our good friend Scott Bridge of CKNX Jr Hockey heydays took over as GM there, and Josh stepped into the director of hockey ops and president role. He leaves the Mitchell Hawks, whom he orchestrated their first ever Pollock Division title 2 seasons ago, to join the once again defending champion Mount Forest Patriots as their new GM, as Rob Nixon steps up the ladder and just wants to take a bit of a step back. Mr. Nixon's been a busy guy the last few years. He's going to take on the director of hockey ops and president role and let Josh be the GM. And boy, the Patriots, it feels like for the last 5-6 years, you can pencil them in for first or second place and probably a title run too. They've won 4 of the last 5 Pollock Division titles, and you can bet with Josh going in there, they're going to have their sights set on not letting anybody take that away from them, Steve.
Yeah, it's tough to get to the top. It's even tougher to stay there. And kudos to Rob Nixon and the crew over at Mount Forest, being able to remain competitive, very competitive, with the changing the guard almost year in and year out. Of course, they'll have Brody LeBlanc back in the lineup, probably the best Pollock Division player at this point in time, and we'll see if he can lead his team again to another championship. Of course, they're going to do it without some personnel. Dylan Shimanowski, high-flying rookie forward, of course, now with the Listowel Cyclones. So he made a shift to the GOJHL, so we'll see what Mount Forest has up their sleeve to pursue excellence once again. We also have to mention some other changes as well. When you look at Kincardine, as Todd Norman shifted down to Godrich, it's just over behind the bench as coach. Warren Beisel, the GM up there, really concentrating on bringing up kids from the Kincardine minor hockey system and the Grey Bruce Highlanders. They've had an excellent minor hockey system for years. We'll see what they can develop. Of course, losing Harrison Muhlenstein to the Listowel Cyclones and Stephen Grant aging out as an overager last year. Hanover Barons, Pete Irwin jumping into the general manager's role. So he'll be the guy there to bring in the personnel. Brady Anderson, the head coach, former Listowel Cyclone, and now head coach of the Hanover Barons. And the Barons, of course, retooling a little bit. They sent Carter Moran to Walkerton. They get Elliot McCary in return. So a little bit of a swapping there between the two teams of players. And we'll see what Peter Irwin, Mike Fisher, and Brady Anderson have in their bag of tricks to get Hanover back near the top again. Of course, the Barons have had a couple of excellent seasons, just haven't been able to close the deal in the finals there 2 seasons ago.
Yes, it's going to be very interesting. Like I mentioned again, you can look for our previews where we'll have full-scale interviews with team executives. That'll be in mid-September, right before the season launches, September 15th. We will launch the season in Wingham, 50 years of Ironman hockey. The following night, Saturday the 16th, we will be there for the Listowel Cyclones home opener against the Stratford Warriors, 50 years for them as well. Walkerton also 50 years. That will be the following week. And then you can join us every Friday throughout the season, and then the playoffs is when things get real busy. CKNX Jr Hockey back for a 19th season. Steve Sabourin, thanks so much for doing this, pal. I'm looking forward to the insanity. We're only a month and a half away.
Watch out, drive-thrus. Here we come.
Absolutely. Get the coffee machines ready, everybody. All right. You can watch the show Friday nights at 8, Sunday nights at 9 with our friends on Whiteman TV. Channel 6 for Whiteman subscribers. We debut on our YouTube channel Friday nights at 9 p.m. Follow us on social media at Instigating Pod. Thanks to our great sponsors, Larry Hudson, Chevrolet Buick GMC here in Listowel, the Listowel Squash Courts. Thanks to our buddy Steve Sabourin of CKNX Jr Hockey and Alan McArthur of the aforementioned Listowel Squash Courts. I'm Ryan Drury for Clarkie. We'll be back next week with more Instigating.